You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in half, but I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. Great to have you with us again here this week. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Lockhart, Texas. And a young lady reached out to me and said, I think you would find some of the topics I write about valuable to discuss on your podcast based on other things, other episodes you've been putting out. Her name is Lynn. She runs a site called AmericanOrthodoxChristian.com. I think after I read you this short list of essays, you will agree with her because I certainly agreed with her once I checked out her material. The Empire of Lies, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, the spiritual perspective, rejection of God, America's downfall, who are today's peacemakers, Russia, God's chosen people, orthodoxy, not a religion, a way of life, Christ is born, glorify him, Christmas Day thoughts. There's a lot of great information on her site. She's got a list of prayers. She's got a list of Orthodox literature, music, film, and so on. I immediately got into this website and wrote back and said, yes, ma'am, you are certainly correct. Please come on this show. And we're going to discuss the spiritual nature of the Russian and Ukraine conflict. I think a lot of times you guys understand, I try to take the spiritual warfare aspect of things going on the planet and see and discuss how they manifest themselves into the material world. And I think that's very important. We're going to get into America's downfall, liberalism, the Enlightenment, Israel, and what's going on over there, and Zionism, all of these less than controversial subjects, right? I mean, these aren't controversial at all. We're going to get right into it. Her name is Lynn. She's an American historian. For over 30 years, her essays and articles were published in magazines and newspapers worldwide. She's been on numerous talk shows, been interviewed quite a bit. She worked as an investigative journalist and a true crime researcher. And now, for her first time on the Counterflow Podcast, Lynn, welcome to the show, ma'am. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing wonderfully today. It's a beautiful day, and I'm happy to be with you.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're here. In the writings that you do over at AmericanOrthodoxChristian.com, you sent these to me, and I was immediately like, yes, she needs to come on the show. Just to entice my audience right off the bat, titles like Rejecting God, America's Downfall, The Empire of Lies, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, the spiritual perspective. And I love that title because that is often what we take. I think a lot of the surface level, let's say Fox News versus CNN talking points are just like, what's the military doing? Or what's Zelensky or Putin? And I try to get at deeper layers than that and look at the spiritual aspect of a lot of these things with the guests I have. So it seems that you would be perfect to do so. Since you're new to this program, I'll let you talk about anything you'd like, really, what you do, how you got to where you're at, and what you think my audience might want to know about you.
Well, thank you, Buck. I've made my entire life, it's been devoted to my writing career. I've written several books, 4 of them actually, in regards to history, spirituality, business. I've also done a lot of interviews for magazines across the United States, cover stories, feature stories. My forte is the personality profile. So I've interviewed some high achievers in our country, lawyers, scientists, historians, artists all over the United States, done feature articles. So I love writing, and I've done that my entire life. However, I've come to a point, and my new website that I've created, I felt led at this time as an Orthodox Christian to bring my faith into the matters of the geopolitical. And for many years, I've actually been a speaker and been invited as guest speakers to conferences, regarding the U.S. Constitution, its application to domestic controversies. And I've come to the point in my life where, after deep involvement politically and in all of that manner, that there is no political solution to a spiritual problem. And orthodoxy is the way, and the focus upon our communion with God then, and our focus on truth, which really has always been my highest priority. It's what brought me to orthodoxy, in fact, needed to be shared with individuals in the United States. And it's a new website, actually. I've done a lot of work in the past, but this is completely unrelated to my career and the work that I do. This is my love of God, my love of humanity, and wanting to share my faith, as well as my perspective and my understanding of the geopolitical with those who do care about the truth. And I can tell you this, I have lost all desire to, as I used to in my younger years, save America, let's help America. Of course, I mean, I love the people of my country. However, as the governance, the United States of America, and even sadly, to a very high degree, the people themselves, the corruption that they accept even in their personal lives is what makes the government as it is. I'm not trying to help save America or prolong it. In my opinion, it's a dead man walking. And my purpose with my website and my speaking now is to share my faith and is to reach individuals in the United States, because I do believe there are some with critical thinking skills, though a minority, and there are some who actually are seeking the truth. They may be Christians, non-Orthodox, and also I'd have to say, Buck, even among Orthodox Christians, I have found a lot of lack of knowledge and ignorance about these geopolitical matters.
Yeah, no doubt about that. When did you convert? Was it a conversion to Orthodoxy? What was your history before that? When was that? And was there sort of a like my spiritual father, I think it's Father Turbo, that says this. One of my priest friends, I think it's him. Was there a road to Damascus moment or something like that, or was it slow and steady? What happened?
I would say that it was for much of my adult life, most of my adult life. First of all, I'm a convert to ROCOR from Roman Catholicism. And it was a lifetime path, as I say, even before discovering the joy, the wonder of Russian Orthodoxy, my church. It was always a seeking of God. I have become very contemplative in my life. And in the Catholic Church was the only church that I felt a sense of God, and that there were those focused upon God's will. I certainly never saw that in Protestant churches. Very sad state. But of course, now I realize, in regards to both, Orthodoxy had the pure truth. I rejected Catholicism. I'd always had a problem with it for many years. In fact, the fundamentals of the differences between Orthodoxy and Catholicism, going back to how they view original sin and the guilt that's carried with it, the Immaculate Conception, papal infallibility. Even in my speaking, I had spoken against it, and yet I was Catholic, but I didn't accept the man-made concepts that were a part of it. I found Orthodoxy, interestingly, because of my love of history. I am a historian, and as it was, let's say, heating up, the aggression of NATO and the United States and what I saw going on, I decided I really needed to do, as they say, a deep dive into Russian history. And both now in the last 25 years, the Soviet history, and because that was not an area as an American I really had focused upon, just the peripheral. And even that I have now come to see was based on lies, frankly, that the government would want us to believe. So it was actually through my study of history, my love of Russia, and I began to recognize something very, I might say, it's been in my heart, my soul. I've come to love the Russian people, their history. There's nothing but admiration can I have for these people. And in Russian, it intrigued me to learn about Orthodoxy. And frankly, I would say not only the Russian people, but the governance, the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, his faith. And I know that a lot of Westerners hearing that discount that. And I've seen it all. I've heard it all, of course, where they attack that. But no, I actually did an intense study for a very long time of his faith and the practice of his faith, which the public is only aware of a fraction of that, which his devotion, his pilgrimages, and his expression of faith. So all of that brought me to the church. And I love these people, and I love what I see it has made in their society, these values coming into it. And I'd have to say, this may come as a surprise to some of your viewers, but in my life, I had never been exposed to the Orthodox Church.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't know. I know there's areas of the country where, the churches are actually quite prevalent, and that's a blessing for them. But in the cities I've lived in, I never was aware of the Orthodox Church. So it was through there that I found Orthodoxy after about a year, I'd say, as the inquirer, although I think the soil was prepared for that
Sure.
seed. For many years, I've been reading the saints, and it was where I was oriented. Then I found, man, there really is the church that I always wanted and yearned for, and this is it. And so I was chrismated at the end of December 2022, actually, and it was about a little over a year as a catechumen.
Yeah, beautiful. You're going to know a lot of this stuff. So this podcast started as strictly political, and then it's kind of evolved over time. And so there are still political issues that we discuss. And one of them that's been it seems like my show goes in these trends where, like, for a month or two, it's got this one topic or thereabouts, and we just attack it from different angles. Mm-hmm. One of the things we've been talking about lately is the weakness of the current regime, not even in terms of like, look, this is just Joe Biden and his regime. I mean the American regime, more broadly speaking, as you could call it, an empire of lies, which is certainly true. Do you think the regime is weak? I've been saying we're in this emperor has no clothes moment, because the propaganda, it used to be kind of good. You'd have to dig in a lot of layers to find the truth. And now they're putting out this, old man with dementia and saying, no, look, it's his age that makes him so powerful and wonderful. And it's like, but we all see that that's not true. It's the strangest thing. Do you think the regime is crumbling? Is it weak? Where do you think we're at in that regard?
Yes, I do, Buck. I believe we're at the weakest moment in history in every way that you would measure it. I believe we are actually approaching, and frankly, I spoke about this even 10 or 15 years ago. I remember doing radio shows and taking questions from people in different cities, and I have always felt we're headed toward economic collapse. Now, that's number one, just on the monetary value. But I would say, as probably your listeners are quite aware of, the extension of the military, 800 to 1,000 military bases around the world, and what for? That's merely for American hegemony. And now the time has come, and I feel, we have Russia, we have China, Iran, but Russia seems to be leading the way and exposing those lies that you're talking about, so that media that worked hand in hand with the U.S. government, I consider the CIA demonic. All of its workings in these other countries, ultimately it's failing, and I think a part of that is because of our communication. We do have the internet, we have travel, and people, it is being exposed. As for domestically, yes, I think that we are headed for a collapse economically, and it is because it's predicated upon lies, and the father of lies is Satan, and I would say fundamentally that is what this country follows. It matters not now who is in the office. Now,
right.
I will qualify that. Of course, there are some very significant differences, but I'm speaking internationally. It matters not. Some may be better domestically, obviously, but in terms of international matters, nobody is bringing love into the factor. It is still always about American hegemony. Not one candidate, for political office is rejecting, all of these ventures, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan, what they're doing in Yemen. You take a look at, as we probably will talk about, what is going on in Ukraine, what is happening in Gaza. All of this is out of desperation by the U.S. government.
Yes.
It's not merely, and it's been, decades. The goal is Soviet Union, Russia. That goes back for decades. Frankly, even centuries, if one thinks about it. But in recent history. But it's not just that. It's the desperation. And that is why I believe we see such vitriolic hatred of Russia, the manifold lies, and the lies to place fear into their people. All the lies about Russia being an aggressor. Well, Russia's not our enemy. Not at all. Although Russia has enemies. First and foremost, the United States, which uses NATO as its tool. So, yeah, I think we're going to collapse. I think it's going to be painful for the people. I really don't see any way to stop it, and that is because it's a spiritual war. And I know you're very aware of that.
Exactly.
But it's a spiritual war, and all of these things that you and I and your other guests are discussing are spiritual battles in that great war between good and evil. So, yeah, I think we're going to collapse. I don't think that the political system is going to be able to save a country that is turned away from God.
I want to ask about, you mentioned it there, Ukraine and Russia. And I will say I'm, for the most part, I would consider myself anti-war. I come from kind of the Ron Paul school of political things.
Yes.
And so I'm generally anti-war. And I think that the Trump phenomenon, moment, whatever we want to call it, helped a lot of what I call like boomer Republicans, boomer conservatives switch to kind of being more anti-war because their guy Trump was, for the most part, at least rhetorically. And so I was happy to hear a lot of that, and let's get out of the Middle East, this is a waste of money, and things like that. And then this Ukraine thing happened, and it seemed a lot of the people, at least in media, and some older people that I know, kind of took a few steps back, except for Tucker Carlson was always pushing the anti-war message. And then all of a sudden it's like, Putin's bad, Russia's bad. It's like, wait, hold on. And we'll get into this. I want to ask you, as we do, did you see the interview with Tucker Carlson?
Yes.
Vladimir? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm watching that, and it's like, maybe because I've become Orthodox and you start to at least try to explore the Eastern mindset versus the Western perspective on things, this very short window of history that a lot of the people in the West look at, it's like, Putin attacked Ukraine, of course we got to back Ukraine. It's like, wait a second. And even in that interview, as Putin's given this long, 20-minute explanation of the history of the conflict and what's happened over the last 1,000 years, basically, I was a little disappointed. Even Tucker for a second goes, well, I'm not sure what that has to do with this. And it's like, dude, it has everything to do with this. That's why he's saying it. Right. I was a little surprised someone as sharp as Tucker didn't quite grasp that at first.
I wasn't surprised.
Oh, you weren't? Okay.
No, not at all. When I watched that, I would say my feeling as I left that and through it, I would just briefly address. The number one good of that was that the voice of President Putin was heard by millions that otherwise never would have. There's no reason that they wouldn't have. I learned nothing new from that, except for, I think, one of the anecdotes that Putin shared about meeting with Clinton. Other than that, the history, the willingness to negotiate, which has always been there, everything, nothing was new to me. So actually, I wasn't at all surprised by Tucker Carlson. I just feel he had woeful ignorance. Remarks about China, his apparent non-appreciation for the archival material that supported what Putin was sharing with him. And as you said, questioning why is he saying it? And I would say this from the very beginning. If I recall correctly, I believe Tucker even mentioned on air that he had not even listened to President Putin's reasons, as stated on February 22nd in his speech. He had never even read it or listened to it until the day of the interview with the president. And I found that, you want to say, shocking for a interviewer not to have done even meager, quote, homework. In all the last 2 years, he's been reporting on this, but he never bothered to listen to the president himself because there was nothing new Putin said there. And there was nothing there that any American in less than 3 minutes in front of their computer could have been listening to the man. You have the Valdai Club. You have his Q&A with the press. You have numerous public speeches, different events that any of us could avail ourselves of. So no, I was not surprised because I had seen no evidence in the last year and a half, 2 years, that Tucker had a grasp of why this happened. So in a way, that's good. I was surprised at such ignorance if you're going to interview him. But nevertheless, it was good. I guess, Putin got a taste of what the average American is like if they were conducting an interview. And so for the sake of an American audience, that's good because they are essentially like Tucker Carlson. They know nothing. However, they were willing to listen. And that is why what Tucker Carlson did is so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, I'm still a little bit, was a little blown away. Just, I don't see why that matters. I will say in Tucker's defense, when he put his post-production intro on the entire thing, he said for a second, we thought he was filibustering basically.
Right, I saw that.
And it sounded like he was basically saying, I'm wrong. I was wrong. What he was saying was important. And it reminds me, it's like you said, all they have to do is listen to the man himself, Vladimir Putin, like after 9/11, and the boomer cons are walking around saying, it's because we're free and that's what this happened. And it's like, well, you could listen to Osama bin Laden and he said it's because of your foreign policy, but that's a similar theme, but different story, we'll say.
I will add this in regards to Tucker. Yes, I saw that and I appreciated that he said that since he interrupted the president a few times in that. But also I have appreciated that, again, he seemed amazed, but I'm very glad that he's sharing it at how beautiful Moscow is and what an incredible city Moscow is, and the wide chasm between life here in the United States. Take any of our large cities versus the quality of life in Moscow, the streets, the metro, all of this. And I very much appreciate, although I'm still surprised that he knew none of this before because it's there. But again, Americans don't seem to seek out to know. They form opinions without learning. But he's learning firsthand and he's sharing it with the American people. And that's very powerful. And I do appreciate that. And most of all, I appreciate that the president was able to share. But I'll say this. I don't believe that the majority of Americans have the critical thinking skills to even comprehend what President Putin shared. I spent a little bit of time, and those I've known have spent a little bit of time looking at the hundreds, thousands of commentary by your average American. And with a few exceptions, most go right back into their programming, their indoctrination, and interpret it through that lens. They see what they want to see. They want to see Putin in this way, or they give a little. Well, he's not as bad. He's not, but they're not grasping it. But I know in the millions that watch that, there had to be a good percentage of individuals who were like, I didn't know that. And now they will proceed to learn. And that was why I believe Putin gave that interview.
Yeah, why? What is the deal? Because I'm 47, so I obviously remember the Cold War. I wasn't an adult per se at all during it. It's just, it's a part of my childhood. I remember it happened. And then communism was gone in the Soviet Union, at least. And I don't understand. Then there's this like hangover from it for at least for the propaganda aspect of it. But I've talked to regular people. It's like, well, I had someone tell me he still wants to bring the Soviet Union back. Putin does. He's a communist. And it's like, what is this coming from? These are such strange, I can't even figure out where this narrative comes from. But, I've heard people chalk it up to, well, it's a Cold War hangover. But it's like, okay, maybe if you're in your 70s or 60s, but I've heard people in their 40s say stuff like that. Where does this weird thing come from?
Well, and first of all, we have the ignorance. I've had quite a number of people who speak of Russia as a communist country. And I'm like, well, where have you been? So they don't even understand the difference. They don't even understand, the collapse of the Soviet Union. I'm a bit older than you, Buck. So I have even more memory of the Cold War time. And I do think there's a good part of it is, as you aptly said, like the hangover from it, it's still in people. And they may share that as their children are growing. But I think that predominantly it is because it is what the United States government, what the State Department, the Pentagon, it's what the CIA wants people to see Russia as a threat. It's only by indoctrinating the American people with the lie that they are a threat to your well-being, to your life, to democracy. I don't know who the United States is to talk about anything democratic. But I believe that they are instilling this. And I've done a lot of research also in regards to what they're doing within our church, within the Orthodox Church.
Yes,
and
we went
back to the 1940s even, the CIA's involvement and targeting the Orthodox Church. And at any given time, even the documents I've read, it has shown that they will use that. They don't care about the parishioners in the church. They cared about where they are located and how they can use. And sadly, people allow themselves for various reasons. Sadly, they're not putting the love of their faith, the love of God first to be used by the CIA. And I would say, no, this is instilled in this. You take a look at the media. It's not balanced. We don't have
right.
we don't have a free press. I can tell you that myself. That's why I had to make my own website to even discuss the Madon, because no publisher wants that. They want to cut it out. They want to add adjectives to when you try to write an objective article. It's impossible. I won't say impossible, but practically so in the United States for anyone in the media to speak the truth. That's why what Tucker did is wonderful. It is. But no, I think it's a lot more than that. They want people to fear. And American people, spiritually speaking, very sadly, the non-Orthodox want an enemy to hate. They always have. You give them somebody to hate. I don't care if it's in the Vietnam War, the way they dehumanize people. They always want to keep them in a constant state of fear so that they can go on with their money operation of the military and the whole scam that it is. And there are people who profit enormously because of the military of the United States. But the only way you could justify it is if you have the people fearful of an enemy. But there is no enemy. There's no enemy in Russia, that's for sure. The only enemy to the world has been the United States. So I think it's quite purposeful, Buck. And I think that you see the way the stories are, you see the way the representatives, as you were talking earlier, speak, and all they know is lies. That's all they know to do, and they get away with it. Even when it's exposed and called out, the people don't even care. Yeah. People accept lies in their personal life to such a degree, they don't even actually care. They may get upset about some lie from an elected official, but, they may call this, certain networks, and news. They might say it's false, it's fake, all their little terms. But when it's saying something they want to hear, then they accept it. Again, lack of critical thinking skills. But no, I think it's not only from the Cold War mentality, but I think that it is being seeded, it is being cultivated by the United States government, both in this country and in all of the collective West.
Let's talk about this a little bit deeper. Like I mentioned earlier, your blog post was the Ukraine-Russia conflict, the spiritual perspective. And again, that's what I find much more appealing to discuss than, let's just say, the surface level news of the day aspect of this conflict. And can you talk about that, how you see the spiritual perspective of this? It's, it seems like we've got Zelensky, NATO, Biden, et cetera. And then there's Putin on the other side of this, and there's so much going on underneath it, especially what they're doing in Ukraine with the original church versus the what I call a fake State Department church and whatnot. Let's dive into that.
Oh, certainly. Well, as I said, truth is my highest priority as an Orthodox Christian. So when one takes a look at what's happening in Ukraine, the truth has really never been shared with the American people. As you and I have both established, it's there for people, but they don't take that step to go and look. The truth of the matter is, as a Christian, I'm not a pacifist. I believe in peace. I have devoted so many years of my life to many activities to bring peace to people in their personal lives, humanitarian work, and also in my work politically. So I believe in peace, but I am also aware, and it is very strong in the Bible, and it is even stated, Paul states, it's when it is possible you go to your brother. When it is possible, you have that peace. But when it is not, it would be a sin. And much scripture supports this, to allow the persecution, the murder, the torture of a person. And I think that most of us, except for some extreme pacifists, which I've debated before, would understand that it is a righteous government, and that is why God has placed governments. A righteous government will defend its people. That is what's righteous. To do anything opposite would be evil, would be complicit in the evil. And in view of Ukraine, no, it didn't start in 2022. You could even say it started in 2014, but I would argue before, with all of the lies that were given to Russia. But we'll just stick to 2014. And that is when the United States, the State Department, the CIA's work was brought to what it had been planning for years, and they overthrew the actual government there. They had a coup. They have concocted quite a number of stories, but if you listen to the people who were there and the people who were participated, and you see what they did on that day in Maidan Square, it was the culmination of what the United States had been planning for a very long time. Overthrow the actual government of the people, instill, as they have in so many countries, a leadership that's going to be friendly, we'll say, to the United States and its use. This goes back, and this in itself, once they have established that in the country, and I'm getting ahead of myself, I don't want to forget, I would also like to inform, because many in your audience may not be aware of, at the time of that coup, we have Ukraine, we have many Russian speakers as a part of that land. Eastern Ukraine is predominantly Russian speakers. That's where we look at Lugansk and Donetsk. So the coup happens. These people do not accept the overthrow of their elected government. They don't accept it. And as a result of not accepting it, this new Ukrainian government began then and there. We've had now 8-9 years of continuous evil. We have had raids into their cities, civilians. These aren't fighters. That Ukrainian government sends its military. We have torture camps. We have basements where they would take people out of their homes. We have the torture camps. We have the incessant shelling, the number of thousands of people who have died since that coup, all because they don't accept this fake government that was instilled by the United States. So it wasn't even a matter that they allowed these people to live. They persecuted them, not allowing them to speak their language, outlawing it in public. It was just a continual persecution of the Russian people. These Russians came, Ukrainians, but Russian speakers in Ukraine came to Russia and has for years asked that Russia would intervene and save them and protect them so that they could have a normal life. We go back to that, the Maidan. I would urge your audience to do a little research on the evil that happened there, burning people alive. And I would add this. I know I digress, but there's just so much. It's such a large topic. I would like to share with your audience, Americans don't trust the websites, even the ones that appear up for orthodoxy. We are now having so many pop up that are completely non-orthodox. And again, if you trace it, you can see where the United States government is involved. But the same with your search engines. Don't use your typical search engines. Go outside of that and get some foreign search engines. It will give you results from all over the world, but it's not going to be censored like you're using the ones that comes to everyone's mind. And that is certainly any one of us who you do a few tests, you'll be amazed at the results. So if you want to research the Madon, you can do so. But no, self-defense is righteous. And that is what the Russian government is doing. They are not only defending people who were being persecuted and killed, murdered for years, and still are in the shellings on civilians who attack civilians, Ukrainians. They're defending the people who asked them over and over, please come to our defense. And I think that the delay, whatever the Russian government decided when it was the right time to do, perhaps, when it was the best time with all of the factors, are coming to their defense, and they are also defending Russia itself. As I alluded to earlier, the plans of the United States and the UK for decades has been to overtake Russia and divide it. The documents speak for themselves from the Pentagon that even after World War II, frankly, prior to World War II, but let's start there, they even had discussions on, Russia, Soviet Union, is weak. Maybe we should attack them now. Mm-hmm. So their goal has always been that. Ukraine was perfect because it's right there. You replace the government, and then you start talking about NATO expansion, bringing in U.S. military bases, when Gorbachev essentially was promised, NATO is not going to expand 1 inch, to the east. And of course, it was all a lie, just like the Minsk agreements in which repeatedly Russia sought peace. They believe in peace. They are the peacemakers in this world. They sought peace repeatedly, and repeatedly they were lied to, which even the leaders of those European countries have admitted. It was all a lie, coming to some terms or agreement with Ukraine. So after 8 years of incredible patience, Vladimir Putin decided it was time to protect not only Russia proper, but also the Russian people who are being persecuted, because we could not allow this to go on. The military was instilling itself. They had built up. They used the Minsk agreements only to bring the military in and to buttress the military of Ukraine for such a confrontation with Russia.
Mm-hmm. It's in American football, when you watch it, sometimes they'll have what they call a personal foul penalty because the ref saw the end of a little skirmish. Well, he didn't see the first guy stand up after the play and shove the other guy or hit his face. But soon as the reaction comes, the ref sees it and throws the flag. And sometimes it feels like Americans, because of the media, typically, they react to the reaction of the provocation that's been happening. I believe the same thing with Israel-Palestine, but certainly this stuff with Russia, it's like Ukraine, NATO, just chipping away, chip, doing these things, and then Russia reacts, and it's like, oh, Russia's bad. See, they attacked that. It's like you missed the first part of the fight. So,
the American people have. The government hasn't. This is what they own it, of course. But and that's the context. That's the value of a show that you and I are doing. That's the value of Carlson's interview with Putin. The truth is being put out there. This didn't just happen isolated. Russia didn't decide one day, oh, we're going to go attack this little and yet the American people accept that. That is what I cannot relate to. There is just you have the world at your fingertips to learn this. And that's the weakness. That's the spiritual weakness of the American people, is that if truth is your priority, you don't form an opinion. You certainly don't accept what the media is saying. You certainly don't accept what the U.S. government. Look at its history of even its plans against its own people and evil plots the CIA has concocted, fortunately, some of which were not implemented against their very own people. You don't trust them, but you listen to them, and then you do your own research. Now, I understand people aren't going to do the kind of research that I do, but I've got to say, in this day and age, everybody could know it if that was the highest priority. But truth is not the priority of the American people. They are consumers. greed. And that is why they accept the kind of government they have. Very, very sad. So ironical to our founding principles.
If you could break down, and I don't like to do the dialectic or just this versus this, but for terms of this interview, can you break down the spirituality maybe that's fueling the Zelensky NATO regime side of this versus the Vladimir Putin and the Russian people side? I mean, do you think it's the spirit, it's an anti-Christian spirit, let's say?
I completely it is. As I said, it's all part, these are individual battles in the spiritual war between good and evil, between God and Satan is the father of this world. Satan, I would have to say, in terms of the United States government, and certainly Ukraine, its proxy, is what is controlling these people in government. Because no person who loves God, who believes in peace, would at all sanction, fund, supply weaponry for the persecution of the innocent, for the murder of the innocent. When I take a look at the Ukrainian government, such as it is completely, there's no love of God in them. They're very good at the media. They're very good at filmmaking, let's say, and creation of the false and trying to show that. And the American people fall for it. The U.S. media, every time I see something comes out from Ukrainian intelligence, that ought to stop you right there. But it doesn't. The U.S. media picks it up and repeats it as if it is a fact. Well, what about, let's be objective and wait until MOD, the Ministry of Defense of Russia, what they have to say about said battle, about said town versus the accusations. When I see a government like Ukraine and the United States, which is dictating it all, come out with lie after lie after lie regarding the battlefields itself, look at how many thousands are needlessly dying. Who would encourage this? The U.S. wants this to continue. And of course, with this war of attrition, it's ironically the United States and NATO countries that are suffering.
Yes.
And I think that is God at work. In the Bible, I don't remember the exact verse, but it references, you meant it for my bad, you meant it for my evil, and God used it for my good. And that is what I see at play here. And yes, I don't feel that there is anything, well, frankly, I feel Ukraine and Gaza are both the biggest examples of battles on the international stage that is showing Satan's work versus that of God. And yes, to me, Russia is a faith-based nation. That doesn't mean everybody is an Orthodox Christian. What it means is, though, fundamentally, our faith, our values are ingrained, are one and the same with our society. And that is why you see such great patience, even on the battlefield. Ukraine could have been wiped out if Russia behaved like the United States has done so many times in history, and what it does and just kills. They don't care about civilian life. When I think about it, the United States has never cared about human life. Human life by the United States and thereby its proxies, such as in Ukraine now, and also in Israel. I put Israel in quote marks. That's not the Israel of the Bible.
Right. Thank you.
But the Zionist state. What we're seeing here is they want to fund this. This is their evil agenda, and it is part of that spiritual war. And they are enraged that finally a country, Russia, has stood up to them. It was not weak. It did not have to comply as it gets away with all the nations that it has up to this point in Africa, South America. It's used to being the bully on the world stage, and that's certainly always evil. And now someone's standing up to them and giving courage to other countries worldwide. We are seeing a transformation of this world. We are going to see a transformation of humanity for those who do choose the truth, which is of God. And there is no way. In fact, as an Orthodox Christian, I see, and sadly, Buck, Orthodox Christians, and of course, we have many different types of Orthodox Christians. We're all Orthodox and share the common faith, but some more than others are quite prone to the indoctrination And I think it's sad because it's coming from guidance from their hierarchy, which is working hand in hand with the CIA, the demonic CIA.
Yes, well put. And I assume, just as an aside, you saw, they've been trying to close down the Zelensky regime, and NATO have been trying to shut down the real Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And when they started pushing services, liturgies, and monks out of the Kiev cave, Lavra, they at some point they were replaced. They had a party in there with music and bands, and so, I mean, that's just one little anecdote, but talk about the manifestation, like in a picture of the spiritual warfare, what's really going on here. You push out monks and Christian liturgy, and you replace it with that. It's
and there's so many such anecdotes, and they're important. They're so important. How could any Orthodox or any Christian, because many that may be listening to us are not Orthodox, they're the Christian. These are our core Christian values. Well, there's nothing democratic about the persecution of the true church, the Ukrainian Orthodox churches versus the fake church. I think some of us call it the CIA church, the fake church, U.S. State Department church, as you said, that has been formed in the persecution. There's other anecdotes too. I think, I don't know the particulars, but most recently, I think today, Buck, the Ukrainians, another little anecdote, are suggesting removing the body of a buried prime minister, I believe, that was with the Tsar. He was actually killed when at one of the assassination attempts on Tsar Nicholas. And he had always said he wanted to be buried wherever he died, wherever he killed. So he was buried in Kiev. And they're now suggesting exhuming his body and telling Russia that we will trade this for some of our prisoners, his body. Now, how depraved and disgusting is that? I mean, you just see the evil of those people, the government. Government.
Right.
Government. Yeah.
Right. Is there a moment in U.S. history that you believe America lost its way spiritually? Because I do want to read this quote, one of the things you wrote that I think is profound and accurate. Western democracy is a pitiful, dangerous, God-forsaken ideology, void of holiness, void of life, the epitome of Romans 1:28-32. The result of rejecting God will always be death, spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and physical, as witnessed by the current state of the USA and its vassals. America is dying. Is there a moment in time you can pin down, or is it more of a just, slow trickle over time? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I've often get asked this question. I think that there are pivotal moments when we made very large devolving, going away from that which is good, the good that we were founded upon, the good that made us prosper and thrive as we have as a country. I do think there are some pivotal moments. The assassination of John F. Kennedy being for one. But I think more so, though, it was that slow devolving, and it started from the very beginning. Because you have to look back, sadly, with all the debate and the devotion of these brilliant men to form this country. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, the debate, when you read what the founding fathers debated, and frankly, well, I still think they gave too much power to the federal government. But when you take a look at that from the very beginning, once it was formed, several of them, Franklin and Jefferson said, I think it was Franklin said, we've given you a republic if you can keep it, And I think Jefferson also said something like, it was made for a moral people. But if you ever lose that, you will lose this country as we are, painstakingly creating the form of. And you can see that, though, the American people themselves, very soon thereafter, did the United States focus on its own good? No, we were a colonial building empire from the beginning. We never cared about the people here. Just like as it was established in, let's start a war with Canada, let's start a war with Mexico. I mean, let's expand across the world because after all, we're special. We're Americans. It started from the beginning. There are battles even on both of our borders to expand as if they were special people. And so, no, I don't think the holiness has ever been there. After all, it was also founded in terms of, we had the many Catholics here, we had Protestants here, and yet I don't ever see the focus on holiness. Sadly, individuals, yes, even individual priests in the Catholic Church, individual Protestants, there are a few that have focused on holiness, but they never have made it as a part of the people because our faith, orthodoxy from the apostles is new. We had to send our own missionaries to bring the original faith. There's even people like me, it took them decades before they realized there was an operating church like this. So we haven't had the blessing of those values. And the values that we did have was of exceptionalism.
Yes.
And even in the founding, bringing this country, they always felt themselves to be special people. They murdered the indigenous people. You look at the Trail of Tears. It's always been us against everyone else as if we're special. Well, that is completely the opposite of what Jesus Christ taught us to be toward our brothers and sisters. So, long answer, brief question. No, I think it was over time. I think it was over time. It got worse and worse as they arrogantly succeeded, and only a few times were they set back. And that is why it's such a wake-up call, and they're desperate now, because now we have a powerful nation leading other countries to say no to your hegemony and to your arrogance that you can exploit people. America, sadly, and I speak of the U.S. government, human life is to be exploited or it's to be killed. They operate by what I completely reject, and all Orthodox Christians reject, that the end justifies the means.
Yes.
Absolutely not. But
Right.
that is what, even from the beginning, though on paper it was good, the people were not good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems, I've always thought there's a bit of a puritanical aspect of that with this American hegemony. It's like, oh no, well, we got to go fix these people. We're cleaner, we're pure, we're better. And it's like, but you're doing it through destruction. It's a strange irony with this. And we can tiptoe around this if we need to. I know it's YouTube. I'm resting on a strike, but you can say whatever you want. And if it seems like we need to curtail it, I can do that in post-production. Zionism and its effects on the United States, its destructive effects. Talk about that.
Well, I think it's very sad. I, for one, do not recognize the part of land that they call Israel that was formed in 48 as the Israel of the Bible. There's extensive research. You can see that is not at all what is referenced in the Bible, past or going in the future in their prophecy. Zionism, in fact, at the time of the formation of the Zionist state, there were many Jews who opposed it, and I mean practicing Jews who opposed it. They did not want this. They knew what would come from making a Zionist state, and of course, it's another outcrop of the United States and the military. It supplies it. Nothing. What is happening now would be happening if not for the United States, of course. But it gets back to dispensationalism.
Yes.
And in the United States, it's very popular for Christians of that ilk, which seem to be the majority in our country, to identify with Israel. He who blesses Israel will bless. And they operate at a very shallow level in their Christianity, sadly. And so they're always looking toward the end times. I'm just speaking of the Christian,
Sure, right.
Our Zionist state. And it's really rather perverted to see the excitement they have. It's almost like they would like to have a World War III. After all, then they have their rapture before everything else happens. They're out of here. It's so shallow. It's a misinterpretation, in my view, in my study of the scriptures and the reading of the fathers. And it's almost as if they want that to happen. I don't feel that there's really any holiness or even a misguided perception of holiness in it. And in terms of Zionism, no, it's completely anti-God. It's a nationalist movement, and you oppress people. The whole idea was wrong. But of course, is how that they were dealing with the situation after World War II, but they never implemented the second part of it, which was the state of Palestine. They never did that. So they never intended to. You can go back and listen to this Netanyahu, just such a evil man, demonically controlled man. And you can go back many years ago, Buck, and I really hadn't thought about it. I went back and looked, and you can find him speaking that he's never going to allow that to happen.
Mhm.
The Palestinians will never have that. This isn't anything new. This is the plan, just like the U.S. and U.K. plan against the Soviet Union. It goes back for decades. I completely reject it. It is evil. I appreciate those who are standing up to the Zionist state. Evil does not justify evil. Again, like we were talking about Ukraine, you take one date out,
Yes.
Russia in the Ukraine, they're taking one date out, October 7th. All right.
Right.
The killing of civilians purposefully is always wrong to target civilians. Evil does not justify evil. To what degree evil happened on that day, and it did, there were hostages taken, there were civilians who died, is a fraction of what, there's nothing proportionate here to going after Hamas that Netanyahu is doing. On the contrary, this is the targeting of civilians. And again, lies. You cannot say that it is not the targeting of civilians when you are killing thousands. It's all supported by the U.S. They're complicit. In fact, it wouldn't happen if it were not for the United States.
Right.
So again, going back to, as you were talking about, the Biden administration saying their little weak words. It's a little too much now. No, it was a little too much when they first began it. It was way too much. It has nothing to do with it. They want the Palestinian people gone. They want to murder as many as they can until they leave so they can take it over and prosper and thrive. And that's been the plan since the formation of the Zionist state. They never intended to have any respect for the people who lived there. Prior to 48, though, Jews, Christians lived predominantly in peace. You politicize it, and you bring the United States and the military in it, and you bring the ungodly, and that's what they are. They're not worshiping God at all. These are atheistic Jews, which are responsible for much of the evil in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well put. We mentioned earlier that I agree with you that this seems to be headed towards the end of the current regime. And again, I don't mean specifically Biden and Harris. I mean the empire as it, broadly speaking here, that we've all grown up with, unfortunately. So do you see this as kind of a moment in time where we're going to witness a turnover, a new spirit of the age, or what do you see coming out of this collapse?
I see good. I know it's going to be painful for those of us in the United States and the rest of the collective West. So be it. There are spiritual consequences for evil. I feel the economic collapse, that is going to be painful. I feel that as you talked about, whoever's in there, you see what has already happened to the United States. There is no border. No, they go care about other borders, right? More of their hypocrisy. They've let this country be completely, it's being destroyed from within and by them. And I liken it, frankly, to the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. It took the Russian people, and they kept their faith alive, 70-something years, to before they were able to have their country back. I liken it to what's going on over here because this is a complete Marxist plan that has been implemented for decades in the United States, infiltrating both the media, the entertainment, the universities long ago, and now you have the government that you have. And they are headed straight to their own defeat. Their national ego will destroy themselves. I do see a lot of hope. I am happy to be allowed to be here at this time regardless of what may happen in this country, no matter how bad it gets or how far it escalates, I am happy to see the rest of the world will be relieved from the yoke, from the evil of American hegemony. And we are in those beginning steps now of that ending. And that is why you see the desperation, the evil that they're capable of perpetrating in Gaza and in the Ukraine, letting these people die needlessly. But in the end, I believe that the good will prevail. I believe this is the pivotal moment for the rest of the world to no longer suffer under the oppression of the United States. Their governments have not been their own. Their sovereignty has not been protected. All the exploitation, and with Russia standing up with its friends and the rest of the world standing up to the United States finally, I see that as good. And I know regardless of the suffering that happens to us in our country and other collective West countries, I think proportionately so, other people are going to be relieved and begin to thrive.
Mm-hmm. Speak on the beauty and depth of orthodoxy from your perspective.
Orthodoxy, for me, for all of us who have found it, is communion with God without any of the man-made making of God in man's image, because that's what, sadly, so many of the other religions, that Christian religions, do. They make God in their own image and all the evil that can come from that. In Orthodoxy, it's the way you live, and it is a communion with God at all times. It's in the church, we find those, we support one another, we teach one another, we learn from the fathers. But at the same time, it is always a focus. It's just like the icons, my icons, to keep my focus at all times upon God and seeking God's will. The whole focus is on the heart, on the nous, to develop that, to evince God's will. We speak of in Orthodoxy God's energies, and then we talk about his essence. His energies are out there in all the beauty we see in the world. We can't see his essence, but it's the same with us as his creation. And in Orthodoxy, you realize that, to the degree I have communion with God and I seek God at all time, and I repent, and I want to live his will, then I become my own energy. I was created in God's image. And so each of us as an individual has who we are, our essence, okay? Our energies go forth out into the world. And I have found that in Orthodoxy, for the first time in my life, it's brought me to others who had this focus on God. And it is the original church, in case anyone is listening who has not explored Orthodoxy. It is the church without anything added, man-made. You go into our church and it's a church. You feel the holiness, and you bring that and you keep that with you at all times. It's wonderful, and it's been a blessing, been a wonderful blessing for me to learn the church does exist and to be a part of it. And it's just wonderful, Buck.
Yes, well put. And just for those listening, I throw this little nugget out there from time to time, but it's something maybe because of the way my brain works, and you said the same thing about you coming to Orthodoxy through your history. This is so fascinating. For those listening that don't know this, here you go. The first Orthodox, quote unquote, Orthodox church was an Antiochian church, Antioch, and the bishop of that was Peter from the Bible. So, I mean, maybe that's not a big deal to a lot of people, but I could not. It's like, oh, Peter, the one that knew Christ, right? That Peter was the bishop over the first Orthodox church, the first Christian church on the planet. So something to throw out there. If people are turned on by the historical aspect of some of these things, I can't get over how fascinating that part is.
I agree. I remember the in conversation, it's like 2 or 3 years ago, And saying that and realizing it, you're in the church. This is the church of the apostles. This is the church that Jesus Christ founded. And why would you want to be anywhere else from those who left it? Why?
Right. Yeah. Now it's time for you to plug anything you'd like, website, books, blog, anything.
Well, thank you, Buck. First of all, let me say it has been a pleasure, this conversation. I really appreciate it and being able to share with your audience. I invite people to my new website where I'm sharing my orthodoxy and my take on geopolitics is AmericanOrthodoxChristian.com. I am an American and I am Orthodox, so AmericanOrthodoxChristian.com. And you will find many resources there, prayers, music, literature, and you will find my essays. Also, I invite you to sign up. We have a free subscription when new content is available. You can simply sign up and you'll be notified. And so AmericanOrthodoxChristian.com. I welcome people coming there, and I'm always open to hearing from my listeners. And
Good.
It is a pleasure, Buck.
Yes, me too. It's been a pleasure for me, and I hope you guys listening sign up. I signed up for the email list or to get things as they are produced from her website, and it's a very good website. Go check it out. I'll link to it, obviously, in the show notes page for this episode. Christine, Lynn, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Buck.
I hope you guys enjoyed that wonderful discussion with Miss Christine. And please go check out her site over at AmericanOrthodoxChristian.com. I think you'll find it quite valuable. Thank you for sticking around. And I hope you enjoyed this as it premiered, as they do every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Central Time on the YouTube channel. Of course, we're on Rumble, all of those things, Odyssey. Go to the YouTube channel if you've not already, hit subscribe, and you'll be notified of all of these things when they drop. And you know what? I have to say something. I got notified via some listeners, but as last week's episode dropped with Jason, my friend Jason from the Too Big podcast, I was watching the premiere. I'm in the live chat as I always am. And we started talking about high time preference and low time preference. And I'm watching me discuss it. And I got them backwards. And right as I'm listening, I thought, oh my, who's this idiot? Who is this dumb guy on this podcast explaining high time preference and low time preference? Because he's incorrect. He got it reversed. Well, folks, that was me. So my bad if you guys noticed that. Low time preference is when you are thinking of the faraway future, and high time preference is right here, right now. I got to do this, got to do that. And so civilizational, I was trying to work that in, and so is Jason. Civilizational framework would be a civilization has a higher, I almost did it again, has a lower time preference. A tribal nature has a very high time preference. And I think if you look around, you'll see that we're quite the high time preference society. There's a multitude of reasons for that. I won't even get into them all here, but I will say, I'm a dummy. I messed up last week as I'm explaining it. And it's a topic. Hans Hermann Hoppe talked a lot about it in his writings, and I loved the topic. So I found it hilarious when I'm sitting there explaining it incorrectly last week. My bad. I've corrected the record. And let's see, counterflowpodcast.com. Go to our Telegram group. We've got a great Counterflow Podcast Telegram group. Follow me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. And until next week, you guys have a good one. See ya.
You get split in half, like on the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.